This is BoomerLife on CL 650.
Don't you listen to what the man says.
Hey, and welcome back to BoomerLife. I'm Zach Spencer on CL 650, and we're talking about hearing loss, the effects, and the solutions, which are very modern and high-tech. We have NexGen's Dr. Ted Venema in studio, a voice you've heard here regularly, and Mike Henwood from the downtown Victoria NexGen location. I called it Opticon before. That's the contact lens solution company, right? No, this is Oticon.
Yeah.
Now, what is Oticon and what do they do? Mike, you can help answer that.
Oticon is one of the major manufacturers in the world, and they have recently come out with a product called the Open, and really is from my experience with people and the hearing aid, it's a little bit of a change in the direction of technology.
And how? How is it different?
How it handles background noise is different. Because it processes things so fast, and that's the one thing that impressed me when I went to seminars on it, was the processing speed of the digital circuit. Really makes a big difference. And so
are you talking about going from quiet to loud quickly, or all of a sudden you're in a room and everybody starts applauding for something and it'll help suppress the, like, what is it that you're saying it's fast at doing?
Well, it's fast in analyzing the whole situation.
Right.
Okay, so it's very fast at that. It's so fast that even in between my breaks in speech, it can cut down the noise.
Yeah.
And because it's processing so fast, I put it on myself and walked outside and listened to it and was very impressed. I've done that with all the hearing aids I've used. But the directionality factor, you could tell exactly where a sound was coming from, and it was just a sound. It didn't bother you.
So this is a full sort of spectrum of sound and location, which is what you were talking about earlier, Ted. Your left and right are still your left and right, because in the past it just amplified all of the sound, right? So now you're getting a full spectrum of sound.
Yep. The complexity of the listening environment is quite big, and Oticon took a different tack. Instead of focusing on directionality, as Mike was saying, which means picking up sounds in the direction you're facing, like a tunnel.
Which is great when you're one-on-one speaking, right?
Yeah, and you're really trying to hear what the person is saying. Oticon took an approach of, let's restore the natural listening environment as much as possible. So think of a room where you've got a large table of 10 or 12 people sitting around. You're speaking to the person beside you. There's a band playing behind you like a quartet. All the complexity of that, and wine glasses tinkling, and Oticon tries to work at the spatial recognition factor. And that's what Mike was saying about it needs that quick processing speed, that digital processing speed whereby it can mimic and take into consideration the preservation of the natural listening landscape in which you are.
So if you hear a fire engine coming down the street behind you, it will still give you that sense that it's coming behind you.
Yeah, you're trying to preserve that as natural a listening environment as possible.
Now, I would guess that this is for somebody that still has doesn't have really bad hearing loss. So this is somebody who's, what did you call it?
Mild to moderate.
Mild to moderate,
which is the most common hearing loss in the world.
So are there different technologies? We spoke about the previous one that's great for someone who's got severe hearing loss and they can put the microphone on their spouse, for example.
Yeah.
This is better for someone with moderate hearing loss.
Yeah, it's also a different tack. It's a different approach. So Oticon has always kind of been a little different that way. They're just trying to tackle the listening and noise problem from, instead of focusing like a tunnel vision in which you're facing, which is great for recognizing what you're saying in a restaurant, but it's not a natural. It's not the natural listening environment. You're very aware that you're listening through a tunnel.
Now, Mike, you mentioned that wearing a hearing device, there's a learning curve with that, right?
Yes.
And people have to get used to it, and you have to dial it in. That's part of your job, is to get the scope of hearing that they've lost and try and mirror that with amplifying the sounds that they need. But there's tuning that goes along and visits back to you, right? So with this different scope of sound, are some hearing aids easier or harder to adjust to? Is this an easier system, or is it just different?
No, I would say it's easier. Recently, I've had several younger people, let's say 30 years old, who have struggled with hearing loss all their life come in and just right away, they just accepted it. And it's because it is such a pleasant, natural sound. That's the comments.
Mm-hmm. So what is Open Sound Navigator? What is that?
Well, so Open Sound Navigator is how it processes and analyzes the environment, quickly analyzes the environment and helps focus on the things that are important. Mm-hmm. But it also gives us control of, with programming, control of environments that people will come into and set up a separate program for that particular environment.
Oh, so if say someone likes to go bowling, right, and you've got all the sound of the bowling alley, you will have a sort of a noisy sound sculpture versus one when you're just at home. So if you say, what do you do? Is that what you ask? What do you like to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's important. They do function automatically very well, but to know the features and what the hearing aid can do is very important to fit it to a person's lifestyle. So
will they have sort of like 3 or 4 different sound sculptures on their device, on their app?
Generally, they can have up to 4. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily start them all out at that.
So what would one be? One would be for home use, right?
Yeah, one might be for listening in quiet.
Right.
Another program might be for listening in noise. Another program might be music. And think about this, music is mostly lower pitched than the sounds of speech. Okay? So a music program is going to want to preserve low C, middle C, and high C on a piano, the notes that we hear, which are kind of in the range of what our voices are. And our voices are usually the lower pitches, the vowels, any sound that comes from your throat. If you put your hand to your throat and you make a sound and your throat's vibrating, you automatically know that's louder or lower. But if you say the letter S while holding your throat, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So,
because that's happening in your mouth, not in your throat.
That's right. So a music program will have a little bit more anchor or emphasis on the lower pitches. Mm. You might have a program for listening on the telephone, specifically to help you with the particular frequencies that come out of your phone.
So are people walking around on their phone and being able to go into the Sound Navigator and just changing the program that they want to use throughout the day? Well, and do they get used to that?
Well, they get used to doing that, but like the Oticon Open, its automatic program is very, very good. And once they adapt to the hearing aid, a lot of people, I just leave it on the automatic
program. Put it on auto mode.
Yep.
The one thing that Ted mentioned was music, and that's what the Oticon does particularly well. I've had people with moderate to severe hearing losses who've given up on listening to music. And after they've had the Oticon Open, they've come back into my office. Oh, I can finally enjoy music again. Mm-hmm. And Oticon's taken an approach to how the hearing aid processes music. And the problem has been not amplifying the music, but it's the input of the music. It was overdriving the microphones and causing distortion.
So the microphone in the hearing aid was getting too much input, right?
Yeah.
So it's able to handle the dynamic range better, right?
Correct. From soft to extremely loud. The microphones of even hearing aids a couple of years ago couldn't handle that big of a range.
So we're seeing like you sort of like these are would this be like the Mercedes-Benz of hearing aids, or is this the Chevrolet of hearing aids?
I'd call it Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, I would call it Mercedes-Benz. And there's a few things that I have found that work really well and have not been done before. But like we talked about earlier, others will catch up.
So this is it's the same. I use the car industry a lot because it's things like airbags, anti-lock brakes, and traction control. That was only in Mercedes-Benz, and now it's in every car. And so you'll see this follow in the hearing aid industry.
In fact, I've often used the automobile sector analogy as well. You're talking about the features in the hearing aid,
right,
or the features of the Honda Civic or whatever, and then the benefits that the customer gets.
Now, one of them obviously is the connectivity, and this, as you mentioned, everybody's following this. Is you have the connectivity of your phone and all of the other functions, right?
Yep.
So are people demanding that now, Mike? Do you think they really want that? I told my Dr. Ted Venema and I have talked about my dad, who's 83 83, he'll be 84 coming up in February, about his hearing loss. And I told him, you could have the TV going right into, and my stepmother was like, oh, we got to get that. You know, and same with the car stereo, right? So people demanding that now?
The new generation of baby boomers, okay, they're more demanding of that technology. But even the seniors, they're now aware of it, and they ask about it, for sure.
Now, and television, it says you have a TV adapter. What is that?
It's a box that connects to your TV, to an audio output of your TV, and then it sends the TV signal right into the hearing aids wirelessly.
That's the one I was telling my dad about, So that's a revelation for a lot of people.
Yeah, and almost all the manufacturers have that. You know, Resound was one manufacturer we talked about in an earlier segment. Oticon is another manufacturer. Phonak is another one.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we're going to talk about Phonak after the break. Our guests are Dr. Ted Venema, Dr. Mike Henwood from NexGen Hearing. Mike has a location in downtown Victoria. We'll continue the conversation next on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.